It started as just a rumor, a local legend passed around the campfire by seasoned hikers and curious travelers. Whispers of an abandoned mine deep in the hills, a place that had been shut down after a series of unexplained accidents. The miners who had worked there were said to have vanished without a trace. Some said the mine was haunted by the spirits of those who died in tragic accidents deep within its dark tunnels. Others told stories of something much worse. They spoke of creatures that prowled the depths, creatures that lurked just out of sight, waiting for the living to wander too close. At first, I didn't believe a word of it. How could I? Ghosts, monsters, those things were stories, nothing more. But the more I heard, the more curious I became, and so I convinced a couple of friends to join me. How bad could it be, I asked them. It's just an old mine, after all. We set out in the late afternoon, the sky above us painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun began to sink below the horizon. The mine was tucked away in the hills, hidden from view unless you knew exactly where to look. By the time we reached the entrance, the air already felt different, heavier, cooler. There was a strange smell lingering in the breeze, damp stone, rust and something else, something faintly metallic, like the scent of old blood. We stood at the entrance for a moment, staring into the darkness beyond. The mine had been abandoned for decades, and yet the entrance was still intact, the old wooden door creaking under the slightest breeze. We lit our torches, each one casting eerie shadows across the walls as we stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately, and the deeper we went, the darker it became. Our torches barely cut through the thick blackness, and each step echoed off the stone walls, amplifying the growing sense of unease. At first we joked around, making light of the situation. Ghosts and monsters? Please. It was just a mine, right? A relic of the past. But then the first strange sound reached our ears. A faint, dragging noise, as if something was being pulled along the ground. My friend Ben stopped dead in his tracks, his face draining of colour. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. We all froze, listening intently, but there was nothing, only silence. We shook it off. Probably just some loose rock, maybe an animal deep in the bowels of the mine. But as we continued forward, that silence began to feel more like a presence. The air grew thicker, heavier with each step, and the sound of our footsteps became louder, more pronounced, like the walls themselves were closing in around us. Then, without warning, it happened. The door to a narrow tunnel ahead of us slammed shut with a force that rattled the entire tunnel. The sound was deafening, the earth beneath our feet shaking as if something had just risen from the depths. Panic surged through me as I whipped around, but the entrance we had come through had disappeared, vanished into the dark. The tunnel we had entered seemed to stretch endlessly, its walls narrowing, its path twisting and turning like a labyrinth. "We're trapped," I muttered, the reality of our situation sinking in. We had come in, thinking we were in control, but now we were nothing more than intruders in a place that didn't want us here. The whispers began soon after, faint at first, like voices carried on the wind. But there was no wind down here. These voices, they were in the walls, in the darkness, hissing low and angry, like something was speaking just out of reach. My friend Ben turned, his face pale and twisted in terror. "It's not the wind," he gasped. "There's something else down here." And that's when we heard it, the breathing. Heavy, laboured breaths that came from somewhere deep in the darkness, close enough that I could feel the air shift with each exhale. It was like a presence, something lurking just beyond the light of our torches. My heart raced and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Whatever it was watching us. We ran. There was no plan, no strategy. We just ran deeper into the mine, hoping to find an exit. But it was no use. Every tunnel we turned into only led us deeper, the walls closing in tighter, the darkness swallowing us whole. The growls began soon after, low and guttural, like something inhuman was hunting us. It was as if the very mine had come alive, shifting and twisting around us, trapping us with its dark, suffocating grip. The whispers turned into something worse, chattering, like dozens of voices speaking at once, overlapping in a maddening cacophony. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was mocking us. It was us. My legs felt like lead, each step growing heavier, my body sluggish as if something was draining my strength. I glanced at my friends, but their faces were just as pale, their eyes wide with... We couldn't even see each other clearly anymore. The shadows seemed to take on forms of their own, flickering at the edges of our torches. And then we realized it wasn't just the darkness we had to fear. Something was moving in it behind us. When we finally stumbled out into the daylight, the world felt too bright, too vivid, like we'd been submerged underwater for far too long. The mine's oppressive air was replaced by the cool breeze, and the distant sounds of birds echoed in our ears. But even as we escaped, something lingered, a feeling, a cold, gnawing sensation that something had followed us out. We couldn't explain it, how we had lost hours, maybe even days down there. Time had warped in the mine, as if the very place had changed us. We had thought we were in control, but the mine had taken control of us. And even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear those whispers, the growls, the echo of those strange, dragging footsteps that never quite stopped. If you ever find yourself lost underground in a place like that, know this: the walls have ears, and there are things down there that hunger for more than just your flesh. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and follow us for more. Join us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Blue Sky for more bone-chilling chronicles, if you dare.